All right, as we're coming up on the weekend, we're finishing out a week where we have been talking about the good life and measuring the good life and making sure that life does not feel meaningless. I opened the week talking about how the writer of Ecclesiastes first looked at life as vanity, as meaningless, as a vapor. But as he began to look at life through the lens of God, he said, I have seen what's good and fitting is to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of life that God has given him, for this is his lot. That was Ephesians chapter 5, verse 18. We talked about how in 1 Corinthians 10:31, it says, so whether you eat or drink or whatever you do all to the glory of God. And so yesterday, we began to talk about making ordinary choices, little choices, regardless of your circumstances, that will help you have a great day, that you are not a victim of your circumstances, that you get to have a great day. Next week, I'm going to go into real detail and share why I think my list that I shared yesterday on measuring a great day is so helpful. If you want to get that list, you can text me the word things, THINGS, to 66866. That's things to 66866, and I'll send you a copy of my Measuring a Great Day list. But today I want to give you a warning. As we finish out this week, I want to give you a real warning, because it does not matter how much time you spend time with God, encouraging others, taking care of your body, playing, learning, all of these things. If you do not beware of these two joy killers that I'm about to share with you, you are going to be miserable, and I don't want you to be miserable. And so the two joy killers that we need to pay attention to our whole life to beware that we're not getting hooked. Number one is comparison, and number two is addiction. So comparison is an absolute joy killer, and addiction is an absolute joy killer. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 12, the Apostle Paul, he's quoting people that say, all things are lawful for me. So in the church in Corinth, there were people saying, we can do whatever we want because we're saved, because we belong to Jesus. We're not like beholden to the law. We can do whatever we want. All things are lawful for me. And he says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, you say, but I will not be dominated by anything. And I have watched so many people wreck their lives through comparison and addiction. Comparison is the thief of all joy, because it does not matter what you have. There's always going to be somebody that has a better version of it. So I live down in South Florida. I live near the ocean, and it's kind of a cool thing. I've had a boat before. My boat was massive. It was a canoe. And in my canoe, I could fit myself, my wife, and one of my children if we wanted to bother to take my kids out in the canoe. Typically, it wasn't fun to take them out, so it was just me and my wife. And you know what? There's a lot bigger boats out there than a canoe. And I have had the joy of getting to be on bigger boats and out in the ocean in bigger boats. And you know what? It doesn't really matter how big the boat is that you get. There's somebody else with a bigger boat. There's always going to be somebody that's got a bigger version of what you want, has a newer version of what you want, has a better version, who's more athletic, who's better looking. And if you will spend your life or even bits of your day just mulling in comparison, you're going to be robbed of all of the actual real gifts that God's given you. And you know what is probably the primary culprit of comparison in your life and my life? That's this little smartphone. I wouldn't call it a smartphone, though. I would call it a dumb phone, because it makes me dumb. Comparison. When you go on Instagram, when you go on TikTok, when you go on YouTube, when you go on Snapchat, when you go on these things, you are comparing your life with a fictionalized version of those beside you, of not even your friends' actual lives, like the filtered version of your friend's life. And your life will never compare to that in a positive way. The other thing I said to be aware of is addiction. Addiction will rob you of healthy relationships, of a healthy self-esteem. Addiction will rob you of all of the good things in life. You become a different person when you become addicted. Now, when I was growing up, the addictions that you had to look out for, smoking, because nicotine was highly addictive. Now with vaping, you still have to look out for that. People also had to look out for drugs and alcohol. So basically like smoking, drugs, and alcohol. And gambling wasn't a huge addiction because you basically had to go to like Atlantic City or Las Vegas if you were really going to gamble. Now, we live in a world where drugs are still there, alcohol's still there, smoking and vaping are still there. Gambling is pervasive. You cannot watch a single sports show without it being sponsored by FanDuel or DraftKings or some kind of gambling thing. It has been so normalized, but it brings no true happiness or enjoyment. It's an addiction. What's really funny is in every one of these advertisements, at the end of the advertisement, they have to give if you're addicted, call this number or so. But I think the biggest culprit for addiction is, again, that same thing, that little phone that we carry around, that supercomputer that has been designed by behavioral scientists to take more and more of your time. Now, what did I say are the two joy killers? Comparison and addiction. What are the things that we dive into the most on social media? It's comparison and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It's getting a notification and we are unsettled until we go after it. I've been reading a book actually recently called Anxious Generation about the rewiring of the American brain. And what is really tragic is if you look at graphs of teenage anxiety and depression, of self-harm, of suicide rates, all of it. If you go to about 2010, and that's when smartphones started really coming out, and then around 2017, when they changed the algorithms in the social media platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and those things, all around that time, the rates of depression, suicide, mental illnesses, and self-harm have tripled or even more just in that period of time. And they are directly linked with cell phone usage and especially social media usage. And so as we're talking about life having meaning, about having a good life, I want to really strongly just help you light bulb. If you're somebody that wrestles with anxiety, if you're somebody that wrestles with depression, if you're somebody that just wrestles with real self-loathing, if you're watching me on a social media thing, I would encourage you, delete the social media. You need a break from it. It's rewiring your brain for poison, and I don't want you to be poisoned. And so your life is a gift from God. Your days are a gift from God. Your opportunities are a gift from God. And if you spend it scrolling on a phone, scrolling in a screen, comparing yourself, addictedly comparing yourself to fake versions of everybody else, you're going to have a miserable life. And I don't want that. I want you to live in joy. So whatever you eat, drink, whatever you do it for the glory of God. And if anything in your life is getting in the way or you cannot do it for the glory of God, get it out of your life. So this is week 1, talking about the good life. Next week, we're going to go into detail on a lot of individual choices you can make. But I hope you have an awesome weekend. Thank you so much for spending time with me. And beware of the joy killers of comparison and addiction. They're out to take your life, and they're out to take the joy from your life. And I want you to have the abundant life that Jesus offers you.